Hey everyone, it's Natalie Bencavanga, and welcome to Facts Over Fear. You guys, today's topic is really interesting because I actually did a reel about this and I tagged the wonderful gentleman sitting here with us today, Max Burns. It was his original work that I pulled from to make that video. And my gosh, did it take off? Because like me, a lot of you didn't know what was going on either. And so this story hit a nerve. And luckily, Max was kind enough to say that he would sit with us today and talk about what he was reporting on. So just to dig in a little bit about what we're going to be doing today, in what is being described as one of the biggest ICE power grabs of Trump's second term, the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act, also known as CORCA, passed in the House last month with the help of 144 Democrats. So what does that mean? Okay, so hiding behind this very vague language, this act basically gives the Department of Homeland Security even more authority, just what they need, this time to collect sensitive personal information, including, but not limited to, citizenship status about Americans who are merely accused and not even charged of engaging in retail theft. And I made a point, I wonder who they might start accusing. So once again, here to discuss what we really know about this bill, any updates that he might have. Is this dead or alive? Is this something else that is now going to be keeping me up at night? Is Max Burns. He is an award-winning advocacy communicator and political columnist and founder and chief strategist of Third Degree Strategy. And he's also very good at responding to DMs. So thank you so much, Max, for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. And more to the point, thanks so much for talking about this. It felt like for a while, you and I were the only two people in America actually covering this.
No, I mean, truly, when I read, I can't even remember how I stumbled upon your reporting, and I was so glad that I did. But when I read about it, I actually had to read it a couple of times, to be honest with you, to actually fully absorb what I was seeing, because I was like, wait a second. Why is this getting so much support from the Democrats? One, and what's actually going on here? And so when I realized how much data collection was going to happen because of this bill and that it was just going to be handed over to ICE, which, further solidifies them in this scary space of authority in terms of how they're able to surveil us, I just thought, oh my goodness, I have to do a video on it and I have to reach out to you to talk more. So Let's break it down for people that are just joining us. I mentioned it at the top of the show, Combating Organized Retail Crime Act, also known as CORCA. How did you first discover this was going on, Max? And what did your initial reporting uncover?
So I actually came to know this bill because of the work of a lot of young progressive influencers across social media who were uncoordinated, just sharing that they read bills for fun. I mean, the kids are all right. They're reading draft legislation in their free time. And then the Vera Institute of Justice, a great group here in New York, picked this up as well. And I reached out to them. They did a deep dive into what this bill actually does. And it is one of the most insidious things we've seen in years. All the more because it hides behind this idea of combating retail theft. I mean, who doesn't oppose retail theft combating? Like, we all want people to go to jail for stealing stuff. We don't want the prices at Walgreens to go up. We don't like that our Tide is behind a big plastic guard. But that bill doesn't actually do any of that stuff. What it does is actually give an unprecedented amount of power to ICE and the Department of Homeland Security to surveil anyone. And it has no practical guardrails to it.
Can you talk a little bit about who is in support of this bill? Like I said, I was very shocked at the amount of Democrats that were supporting this. I've been very frustrated, if I'm going to be honest, Max, about the level of not even support, but just let's say the lack of roadblocks that the Democratic Party has put up against ICE, against this fascist regime. And they sort of seem to be just kind of like going along with things, which really bothers me. I think this is why a lot of people say we don't have a true opposition party in this country. Can you talk a little bit about some of the players involved and why they are still in support of the bill, or perhaps they have decided not to vote in either direction or skipped the vote?
Yeah, it annoys me a lot because we have this period where Democrats were front and center in the media saying all the right things about ICE, that it should be defunded, it should be abolished, there should be oversight. What happened in Illinois and Minneapolis and Los Angeles was wrong. And they were right to do that. I mean, that was something a majority of Americans agreed with. So imagine my surprise when I see a bill that offers unlimited surveillance authority to ICE based on a shady public private partnership with corporations, and
Mm.
144 Democrats in the House vote for it. There were over 100 that co sponsored it. And I knew that they knew they were doing something wrong because when Vera and
Mhm.
myself and others started reaching out to them to ask why they were supporting this, they suddenly stopped co sponsoring it. But 144 Democrats voted for this. Some who co sponsored it after being told what it was decided not to be present for that vote.
Mm.
But it passed. It moved on to the Senate where it's sitting right now. And unfortunately, even more Democrats are co sponsoring it every day. We just had both senators from Illinois, where ICE was in Chicago harassing people. Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth endorse it. Uh, Mark Kelly in Arizona has supported. Amy Klobuchar in Minnesota, where ICE murdered two American citizens, supports it. And the shame is not a single Senate Democrat has dropped their support, even after being made aware of what is in this nightmare of a bill.
Kind of makes you wonder, Max, where their true loyalties really lie, because at this moment, it doesn't seem like it's with the American people. I want to touch on something within it. In case you see me writing, I'm just producing as we're going live. So I'm just taking notes so I don't forget things as you're saying all of these important notes. With the affordability crisis at the forefront of everyone's mind, the cost of living is higher than ever for so many people. People can't afford groceries. They're deciding whether they pay their electric bill or get their insulin renewed at the at the pharmacy. I mean, these are real life issues.
Yeah.
It seems really sick and demented that this would be the time that you would want to come up with a bill called the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act, also known as CORCA, when we know that people are struggling now more than ever. And when we think of the fact that Americans who are just merely accused of theft and not even being charged, this could be how they are able to usurp more power and control over people. What do you
Yeah.
think that says about how out of touch our governing bodies are right now, even though people have been begging the government to do something to help us? And who do you think this bill, in actuality, is going to target?
Well, it says you're either incompetent or corrupt. I mean, this is not an 80-page bill, right? This is
Mm,
a short bill. You can read it over lunch.
mm,
And the fact that Democrats either didn't read it or did read it and went along with it tells you a lot. I mean, we cannot ignore the fact that a big driver behind this is lobbying money from the retail industry, from big retailers who now have a
mm.
bill where the federal government is going to help foot the bill for their own theft protection. Though no Republican I've talked to who supports this can explain to me under any reading of federalism how shoplifting from a Walgreens is a federal issue, much
Mm.
less how it involves the Department of Homeland Security to be involved. But that's the reality. I mean, these retailers have pumped millions of dollars of lobbying cash into the pockets of Democrats and Republicans alike. So they're either not going to read the bill that closely or they're going to vote for it because it's a bill a major donor wants and they're not going to figure out what's wrong with it.
Wow. Why do you think this has gone so far under the radar? Because like I said, when I posted my video, it really took off. And I think part of that reasoning was because this was so shocking and so few of us were speaking about it. But why do you think they've hidden this? Because there's lots of
Yeah.
terrible things they're doing right now that they don't seem to be putting so far into the shadows. But Corca feels almost intentionally quiet to me.
And that's one of the things that really pricked my ears up when I heard about this is, as a journalist, it's a story if everyone is talking about it or no one is talking about it.
Yes.
And no one was talking about this to the point that I pitched this story to almost a dozen media outlets. Not a single one accepted
Really?
it. And in my entire career doing freelance writing, I've never had a story that media outlets were telling me, don't do it. It's not a story. There's nothing there. As it turns out, from your engagement, from what happened after I published, there's a lot there. And the
Mhm.
fact that this wasn't being talked about, I think, is both a function of the many, many, many crises going on in the Trump administration, filling up the media, and the fact that the media these days is not what it used to be. They don't have the resources to look into things that they're pitched and to see if these are actual stories worth publishing. I was fortunate with Daily Kos and The Hill to be able to publish this, but some major outlets that should have known better certainly took the easy way out on it.
If you're just joining me, I'm Natalie Bencavanga. I'm here with Max Burns. He's a political columnist and founder and chief strategist of Third Degree Strategies. Most troubling, and I'm going to use the words from the article, is the fact that the CORCA's language provides no meaningful oversight over the conduct of this new national intelligence operation, with no limiting language included in the bill and no clear definition of what cooperation actually means. CORCA's new agency has an effectively unlimited remit to demand whatever information it wants. That's concerning
Yeah.
from retailers and local police. Can retailers even refuse to cooperate here? What were you seeing?
So let's break down exactly what it's doing. Is this bill
Yes.
creates a national intelligence hub under the Department of Homeland Security. Its director is appointed by the director of ICE for reasons no one can explain. And then what it does is it creates cooperation, in their words, between retailers and the federal government. So people who are accused of shoplifting are questioned by the retailer. The retailer then reports all that information up the chain to DHS, which then is free to share it however they want. There is literally no language in the bill limiting how this is shared, what reasons it could be shared for, how long this data can be kept, if you're allowed to have access to it. They can share it with local law enforcement if they like. And more to the point here is if you decide not to cooperate, for example, if a Chicago PD decides they don't want to be part of this, sure, you can do that. But in return, the federal government can do what's called reassessment under this bill, which is they can decide if the federal grants you get for police officer training, for police vehicles, are actually grants you need right now. So, in other words, cooperate or your grants and all of the funding that keeps your department operational is at risk. And meanwhile, with these companies, like Walgreens, Rite Aid, that will be doing this, there's a reason they're doing it this way. It's because if
Mm-hmm.
I stops you outside of a Walgreens and starts asking you questions, you
Mm-hmm.
have very clear Fourth and Fifth Amendment protections,
Mm-hmm.
constitutional protections over what they can ask you and when that information can be used. That's not true if it's a company. If it's a private business that does it, your bar is much, much lower. And if they send it to the government, they've now essentially interrogated you in a Fourth and Fifth Amendment workaround that is, it's clever in the way that it works, except that it's evil.
Oof. I mean, I couldn't help as you were speaking. I kept thinking that, the government is sort of functioning like a bad Sopranos episode at this point. It's feeling very much like a shakedown of
Yeah.
the American people, right? And like you said, circumventing our rights through corporate support. And my mind keeps going back to many moons ago when Citizens United passed. And we basically
Yeah.
said that corporations had basically the similar or same rights as people, that they would be able to influence government with their dollars in the same way. Where do you see that connection, if any, between the super PACs and the amount of money that has flooded these lobbying groups since Citizens United and the rise of fascism along with sort of this corporate cooperation?
But corporations are more than people now. They definitely have more
You're
rights than
so
you and
right.
I do. I mean,
Oh,
nobody's deporting them.
mm,
But you make a great point. I mean, the super PAC money that's come in has completely distorted this process to the point where Democrats will support a bill like this, thinking this is a bill that's supporting small retailers and I'm
mhm.
helping fight retail theft. And they aren't going to think beyond that because their paycheck depends on them not really thinking beyond that. If they want those tens of millions of dollars that the American Retailers Association gives, if they want all that support in the Midwest, they're going to support the bill, regardless of what it actually does, which is why you've seen practically zero Democrats speak on the record about this bill at all. They don't even want you to know this bill exists, let alone that they're supporting it.
Wow. I mean, I just get such chills when we think about the implications that something like this can actually have if it does pass.
Yeah.
So let's look at this a little bit more. I know you had mentioned this but I want to just dig into it a bit, especially if you're just joining us. So under the bill, DHS can also prioritize directing federal grants to communities that cooperate with their invasive requests for this personal data. So once again, we're talking about this leaving this cash-strapped local governments facing this brutal choice:
Yep.
violate the civil liberties of their residents or face crushing budget shortfalls. Do you think a bill like this had to come after sort of what happened last year with Trump basically saying, hey, we're going to cut all of these federal supports? Doge is coming in. Like, do you see a method to this madness, so to speak? Is this as random as some people would make us think, or do you think there's a methodology here that they're trying to implement in the long term?
Yeah, I mean, this is part of a very well structured, and I know saying well structured and Republican these days sounds like an oxymoron, but it's a very well structured and long term plan that goes beyond Donald Trump. I mean, this goes back to the Patriot Act and the idea of
Yes.
starving state governments of grants, making them dependent for law enforcement funding on the federal government,
Mm,
and then putting in extreme conditions for cooperation on it.
mm,
And it's effective. I mean, where it has passed, it works. Most of the surveillance that happens in this country doesn't come from the federal government. It comes from state and local partners who are doing it in order to get federal grant money. That's one of the great overlooked horrors of the surveillance state.
yeah.
And this bill just does it without hiding it. Because I feel that at this point, Republicans especially have reached the point where they don't feel like they need to hide it anymore.
Mm.
It's a really terrifying statement on where we are.
Yeah, I agree. I think at one point, even recently, it seemed as though, still saying that you were not a fascist was a good thing. But now it seems as though they're not even shying away from that word, from white Christian nationalism. It all seems to be
Yeah.
just, they're just going right along with this language, and willing to really sign our rights away. And I always find it interesting in a philosophical way, Max, that we always pit this idea of safety and freedom against one another, right? So it's sort of like
Yeah.
under the guise of protection, we're protecting you, and companies from theft, from petty theft. And to do so, we must first strip you of your civil liberties. Shh, but we'll be quiet about that. Do you see this sort of pitting against one another in other things that you're looking into or that you notice within the larger context of the United States? And what do you think the way we get out of this has to look like? I'm trying to get people to dream beyond this moment. I don't know how long this moment will last, but where can we go from here? Because we know sacrificing our safety in no way, or excuse me, our freedoms in no way ever provides more safety. It actually puts more of us in harm's way.
Yeah. And one of the most terrifying things for me, as someone who worked on the Hill and has seen how legislation works, is not just that they're putting in bad ideas, but that we're redefining what words mean. You hear
Mm-hmm.
organized retail crime. You think organized crime, cartels. Are there gangs or mafias that are organizing and robbing retail stores and pharmacies?
Hmm.
No. In fact, if you read what the definition of organized retail crime is, it's whatever the director of this department thinks it should be. There
Wow.
is no set definition. And if there is no set definition, there is no definition at all. It will change as needed to fit the purposes of whatever information they need to gather. It is the Patriot Act redux, except we're not hiding it now. And Democrats are apparently so afraid of being perceived as soft on crime after, retailers did such a good job of convincing them that shoplifting skyrocketed during COVID, a claim which was disproven, by the way. And they are
Yes.
so terrified of being seen as soft on crime, they'll go along with it. I mean, this feels a lot like 2003. It's because it's a lot like 2003.
No, I really appreciate that. I have a couple of comments here. Joe says, this is helpful. Delania says, I came in late. What we are discussing, it sounds scary. It is scary. And don't worry, because I'm going to post this on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course here on Substack, so you can listen back to the whole thing. But I always say the monster in the dark is a lot scarier than the one in the light, which is why we have to talk about the issues that are trying to be swept under the rug, like the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act, aka CORCA. When we look at the bigger picture here, And we're seeing the trajectory of where things are going. And like I said, the cost of living skyrocketing, more people falling into poverty. We're seeing ICE work hand in hand with local and state police officers. I've talked to other journalists who have also broken stories on transparency acts and forcing the hand of local governments to admit that they are working with ICE. Just that alone. Why do you think the need for independent journalism is so important right now? Because you touched on it at the top of the show when we talked about the fact that no one would even pick up this story. How do you see that narrative of the billionaire class owning our information, as well as what we're seeing with these bills? How does this all fit together into a fascist agenda?
Well, it's consolidation, right? And it's not just in media. Media corporations are consolidating at a record rate. The number of mergers now creates fewer editors who have power to approve or kill stories. It creates fewer outlets for those stories to be in, and it also unifies their interests. If you
Hmm.
have five mega corporations that control news, those mega corporations that are all multi-billion dollar organizations all have generally the same long-term economic interests.
Yeah.
So if stories go against that narrative, you're not going to find a place that says, I'm an upstart young publication that's interested in breaking big news and shaking things up, because that goes against the shareholders they're legally required to serve. I mean,
Hmm.
you see this across the country. There's consolidation in grocery stores. There's consolidation in electricity providers. There's consolidation in the telecom industry. Most states now have one or maybe two telecom providers to choose from.
Yeah.
And this all comes from a government that is compliant in allowing capitalism to become indistinguishable from monopoly.
Mm.
When you have those monopolies, you no longer need to serve people because people do not have a choice in who they choose.
Yeah.
And
And
that
and I
makes it so easy.
No, I agree. And it got me thinking about too this idea of the merging of and the consolidation in healthcare. Yes, Joe.
Yes,
The
absolutely.
merging of sort of corporate interests with government interests, right? This circumventing of our rights, this weakening of government regulation. They marry one another, and who
Yeah.
loses? The American people. And that's why I wanted you to answer that question. And I know that wasn't fully on topic, but with Facts Over Fear, I really want people to connect the dots and see how all of these things are impacting them in their real lives. And in particular, I love having other journalists on so we can provide some sort of media literacy and understanding of the larger context of what we're seeing from our position, boots on the ground,
Yeah.
as sort of the first responders of the information war, so to speak. Max, as we wrap this up, so I had mentioned, and please tell me if this is still true. So it's not dead. This bill is very much still alive. So
Yeah.
what would need to happen for this to pass, and what can we, the people, do to make our voices heard? If you have concerns and you're listening right now, or if you listen later.
Yeah, it is certainly not dead. I mean, in the immediate term, there are, I think, 45 co sponsors of this in the Senate, including a bunch of Democrats that break my heart to see them supporting this, including Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota, who
Mm.
should know better about ICE.
Hmm.
And you need to call senators. We need to engage and bring this into the public conversation. Despite what it might seem, politicians are very susceptible when they start getting phone calls about an issue,
That's right.
especially one they are desperately trying to not talk about at all. And in the
Hmm.
longer term, we quite frankly need to change who we're electing. 144 Democrats in the House voted for this. That's 144 Democrats who will vote for something pro ICE again, as long as it's sugar coated. And you're not going to get different results with the same politicians. The answer is change on a basic level.
I agree, and thank you for that. I think, when I think of all of the things that we're dealing with, and I talk to so many people that are still incredibly apathetic to the system and feel
Yeah.
almost like they can't win. There's a sense of hopelessness. There's a sense of helplessness. Uh, what I always try to remind people is, once again, our leaders are actually followers, and they will do what seems popular at the moment. So if enough of us put pressure on them, we can, and in the past have, moved
Yeah.
them towards or away a goalpost. So as upsetting as it is to hear these things, there is still a lot of time to change people's hearts and minds on this topic and make sure that this does end up dead and that this is one
Yeah.
nightmare we can get off of our plates so we can focus on others. Max, I so appreciate you coming on Facts Over Fear. I would love to have you more regularly because I know there's a million things that you and I could be digging into and
Yeah.
breaking down for people if you're interested.
Oh, it's such a calm time, though. Everything's going so smoothly. What do we have to? No,
What
I'm
would we
happy
even
to
talk
anytime.
about? I
Anytime.
appreciate that. Thank you so much. If people want to learn more about your work, the things that you are covering right now, or places where they can find where you're at, where can they go?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @themaxburns. I'm also writing regularly every Wednesday in Dame Magazine and The Hill and MS Now as well.
That's awesome. And you also have a show on Sirius?
Yes, and thank you for reminding me. I'm terrible at promoting my own work, and I
It's
am
okay. I got
occasionally
you.
guest hosting on Sirius XM Progress 127. We are always happy to have you join the conversation there as well.
Oh, I'd love to join you there. So guys, we're just going to flip flop from one place to another. You'll be able to
Yeah,
catch us both. It'll be great. But once again, I so appreciate you taking the time to join me today to talk about CORCA. You guys, if this issue moved you, once I post it, make sure you tag your state representatives, your senators in particular, and let them know that this is something that you will be watching. And if they vote for this, you will not be voting for them the next time they are up for election. And as always, everyone, until next time, please take care of yourselves and each other. Thanks again, Max. Bye, everybody.
thanks.